So these three guys were standing around talking about the greatest discoveries of the human mind. And the first guy is an MIT graduate nuclear engineer. The second guy is a geneticist, graduated from Harvard Medical School. And the third guy is a ditch digger. And the first guy said, well, on the subject of what are the greatest discoveries of the human mind, as an engineer, I think it has to be the discovery of nuclear fusion. He said the ability to create energy to power the world, and sometimes that discovery can even be used for harm. And the second guy, the geneticist, says, yeah, that's very impressive, but he said, I think that the greatest discovery of the human mind was the unlocking of the human genome. He said that gives us the ability to cure a lot of diseases and perhaps potentially someday even create human life. And so they turned to the third guy, the ditch digger, and they said, what do you think is the greatest discovery of the human mind? And he said, it's got to be the thermos. And they said, the thermos? What's so special about the thermos? And he said, well, when I go to work in the summer, my wife puts iced tea in my thermos, and when I open it at lunch, it's cold. And when I go to work in the winter, she puts hot soup in my thermos, and when I open it at lunch, it's hot. He said, how do it know? And that's the way I am with technology. When I get on Google Maps directions and I say I want to drive from Memphis to LA, and in 2 seconds it tells me every turn to take and plots out the time and stuff, I think, how do it know? So when I told the young guys in the office, I've got 2 guys in the office that are under the age of 30, that I was going to speak at the BEI conference on electronic marketing, they fell out of their chairs laughing. They said, you don't know anything about technology. And I said, well, that's true in terms of how technology operates, but I said, I think I'll know a little bit about its potential and what it can do. And so we're going to talk about electronic marketing, and if I can get that arrow to disappear, which I'm not sure. So another example of the guy speaking on technology who doesn't know how to operate the computer. And one of my points is, you don't have to know how to do this. You need to understand the potential, and if you don't have somebody under the age of 30 working in your office, you need to find somebody. So our electronic marketing program is all built around our target audience. And so the first step is for us to identify our target audience, brand our firm, who we are and what we do, create a messaging program, and then do some public relations. And so that's what I'm going to talk about this morning. And the first step in that process is for us to identify our target market. I'm in the ESOP business. Somebody said this morning, are ESOPs your sweet spot? I said, ESOPs are my only spot. That's all we do. And so I never market directly to business owners because what I do is just too complex for me to start with a business owner and try to communicate what an ESOP is and how it works. At some point during that process, the business owner is going to get overwhelmed with the complexity, and he's going to need to have a trusted financial advisor, usually a CPA or his lawyer, perhaps his financial advisor, that he turns to and says, is this guy telling me the truth? Is this right? And so all of our marketing is to attorneys, CPAs, commercial bankers, financial advisors, exit planners, and investment bankers. And so we begin with that premise that we've got to identify our target market and build our marketing strategy to appeal to those people. So in terms of branding, that's just the statement about who you are and what you do. And so our branding is that we're a national ESOP consulting firm, established in 1981 and based in Memphis. And then we list kind of the 6 key things that we do. And every announcement that we send out, and we send out announcements at least weekly, every one of them at the bottom of it has that statement about who we are and what we do. Because we want to continually remind folks of that fact, because they're not going to do business with you if they don't understand that. So, people in marketing used to talk about elevator speeches. That's our elevator speech about who we are in what we do at Executive Financial. Then a lot of our electronic marketing program is built around messaging. And so this ties in, I think, very nicely with what Fletcher was talking about this morning. We've built our messaging program around our websites, social media, webinars, these announcements that we do, third-party websites, all designed to maximize SEO, which stands for Search Engine Optimization. And we'll talk a little bit about that. As I said, Fletcher touched on that this morning. It's equally important for us to know what we don't do in terms of messaging. We don't do advertising. We don't do brochures. We don't have a firm brochure that, was the rage during the 80s and 90s. We don't do that anymore. And we don't do sponsorships. And so it's easy when we get asked to do those kinds of things to say no, because we know that that's not effective for us. I assume that all of you have a website. Our website is nothing special. I think the only thing that we've done that's a little different and perhaps unique about our website is that we have a banner that scrolls across the top of it that has a series of questions. And so instead of just making declarative statements about who we are and what we do with our website, we're trying to hook the business owner or the advisor that looks at it with just a series of questions. How much is my company worth? How can I take care of the employees that have helped me build my business? And so on. And so those scroll across the top of our website. We've also got a website for the book that I wrote, and it's a pretty basic, simple website as well. When I was preparing for this, I had the guy in the office who is our financial analyst and our technology guru start putting the presentation together for me, and he comes up with this slide about Facebook. And I said, Ben, we're not on Facebook. He said, we've been on Facebook for 3 years. I mean, I had no idea. And so you've got to hire a young person, and you've got to trust that young person because they understand. I'm a grandfather. I mean, I'm 58 years old. When I was in law school, there was no such thing as the computer. When I got out of practice, my first form of technology was an IBM Selectric mag card typewriter. For those of you who are over 55, you remember what that is. That was followed by the Wayne computer, and IBM didn't even have a PC at that point. And so we're on Facebook. We're very active on Twitter. Every announcement that we do, our announcements go out via a service called Vertical Response. Vertical Response is extremely inexpensive. And whenever we send an announcement, Vertical Response automatically posts that announcement to Twitter. Then Twitter, we have a live Twitter feed on both of our websites, so it goes there. And so that helps develop that activity that Fletcher was talking about that you need to have. You don't need to have just a static presence on the web. You need to have a dynamic presence on the web. And having the announcements that are going out through these various social media outlets really helps you create that dynamic presence. We're on LinkedIn, of course. And then one of the most effective things that we've done this year is webinars, and they've been effective for a number of reasons. And the technology that we use for the webinars is Citrix, and they've got this thing called GoToMeeting and GoToWebinar. And it's, again, very inexpensive, and it's so much more effective than doing live presentations and trying to gather together groups of people. It just works much, much more effectively. So our goal this year was to have a webinar every year. We skipped April. We just have done July and August. We've got 2 more planned out. These things are very easy to do. A webinar is not a real time-intensive thing because you all have materials that you've used already, and all we're doing in these webinars is just delivering those materials that we've done over and over. I probably have not spent more than 5 hours preparing for any of these webinars. And one of the things that we've done, because listening to somebody speak over a telephone and watching a series of PowerPoint slides on your computer can be excruciatingly boring. So we've tried to do something this year that we hadn't done in the past with these webinars, which is to have partners on each of the webinars that we do. And that does a couple of things. When we do a webinar, it's never me speaking for an hour and the audience looking at a series of PowerPoints. It's always at least me and one other speaker, and oftentimes two others. And those other speakers might be in Dallas or in Baltimore, and they're with large firms that we're proud to be associated with. I did a webinar back in May with two attorneys from K&L Gates. K&L Gates is the 8th largest law firm in the country. They've got 43 offices on 5 continents around the world. And so doing a webinar with them makes the session more interesting because there's interactivity instead of just one person lecturing, and it increases your credibility to be associated with organizations like that. And so that's one of our goals now, is to have people with prestigious organizations involved in each of the webinars that we do. Lawyers and CPAs and ESOP administration firms are notoriously inept at marketing, so they're all glad for us to help them market themselves and participate in these sessions with us. So we send out announcements about these things, and that announces what the subject matter is going to be, the date, who the speakers are going to be, and then at the end of every one of these, it has our branding statement. We also have tried to get on other people's websites. Being on your own website, of course, is great, but being on other people's websites is even better. And so one of the chapters of my book, the ESOP Coach, is about comparing the sale of a business to an ESOP to a sale to a third party. And so the NCEO, the National Center for Employee Ownership, several years ago, asked me if they could reprint that and post it on their website. And so that's helped to drive a lot of activity by being on their website. The Advanced Underwriting Department at John Hancock wanted to do a session on ESOPs earlier this year, and so that was a radio interview kind of thing that they did with me, and so I'm on their website as a result of that. And then, of course, the book is being sold through Amazon, and so we're on that website as well. So as Fletcher was saying this morning, you want to have a dynamic presence on the web, and so for us, that means that we want people to be able to find us on Google and on YouTube. So a lot of what we're doing is designed to maximize our search engine optimization on those sites. So he talked about key phrases, and so some of our key phrases are employee stock ownership plan consulting. And if you do a Google search for that, we're at the bottom of the first page. If you do a Google search for ESOP feasibility analysis, we're at the bottom of the first page. If you do one for ESOP process, we're at the top of the first page. If you Google ESOP Coach, we're all that you're going to find. If you Google ESOPs and ownership succession planning, we're mentioned twice on the second page. So we're going to have to work at that to get that bumped up to the first page. So having this dynamic presence can really help people find you. Now, do I think I've ever sold an ESOP because somebody found me on the web and called and said, I want you to do an ESOP? Absolutely not. And I don't think that will ever happen. But when I get introduced to somebody and they want to know if I'm legit and they go to the web to search about ESOPs, this gives them the confirmation of who we are. I don't know if this is true, but I heard recently that YouTube is utilized more in searches now than Google, and so we've got a big presence on YouTube as well. A couple of years ago, there was a person that I had known who went out on her own in the public relations business. And I said, I've never been interviewed. My book had just come out, and I said I'd never been interviewed on a news show. I said, do you think you could get me connected to do that? And she said, sure. And I said, what's it going to cost? And I was very pleased when her answer was only $2,000. And so she got me 4 interviews on local news shows. So that averaged out to a cost of $500, which is extremely inexpensive.
24 now, and he calls himself the ESOP Coach. This morning, financial advisor Kelly Finnell joining us. ESOP? What's an ESOP?
An employee stock ownership plan.
Employee stock ownership plan. Okay, is that and you've written a book actually on this called The ESOP Coach.
That's right.
Are there big advantages over employee stock plans as opposed to any others?
There are. There are advantages both for the business owner that sponsors the plan and for the company's employees. For the business owner, it gives him the ability to sell his company to this plan on a tax-free basis. Mm-hmm. So it's the only way that a business owner can sell a company and get the proceeds from that sale tax-free.
Yeah.
And for his employees, it gives them a stake in the company that they work for.
What made you want to write a book about this?
Well, there are a lot of books about ESOPs, but all of them were written for lawyers and CPAs and investment bankers, and there's really nothing out there that explains this plan to business owners. And so that was my mission with this book, was to write something that was understandable.
So I'm not going to bore you with the whole interview, but I wanted you to see the second part of that, which was the graphics that they built in. You know, that would be an incredibly expensive thing to do if you had to do it on your own. To go out and build in all of that tape that they put behind that, where you hear my voiceover with all of those things. So, you know, having that on YouTube is just a very nice thing to do. And so one of the things that they asked us to do as part of these presentations is to talk about how these things have produced results. And so you'll see down at the bottom, the first recent case that we've done was an existing client. It didn't break the record because that company had only been a client for 10 years when I finally did an ESOP transaction for them. We got a small manufacturing company that we did an ESOP for that was a referral from a CPA and 3 bankers. So this was a local company, and the business owner asked a lot of people, you know, who should he talk to, and everybody gave him our name. The next one was a collection agency that was a referral from a CPA. Next one was an environmental consulting firm that was a referral from a BEI member. And the company attended a webinar. And so the webinar didn't drive the business, but before they hired us, they attended one of the webinars that we did online, and that gave them the comfort in what we were doing that they hired us. And then the third one was a Vistage client. They had read the book, and they attended a webinar as well. So that is my discussion about electronic marketing, and I hope I fooled all of y'all so that you now think I know something about the subject.